On Christmas Eve, 1945, a quiet family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia erupted in flames. While most of the town slept, flames tore through the Sodder house, trapping a family inside. George and Ginny Sodder, along with four of their children, managed to escape into the freezing night. But when the fire finally died down and the ashes were searched, something was terribly wrong. 5 children were missing. No remains, no bones, no evidence they had ever been in the house at all. From the very beginning, George and Ginny Sodder refused to accept the official explanation. They believed the unthinkable, that their children had survived and that the fire was only the opening chapter of a far darker mystery. So settle in, take a deep breath, and prepare yourself for a walk in the dark. George Sodder was born in Italy in 1895. At just 13 years old, he immigrated to the United States with his older brother, who soon returned to Italy, leaving George alone in a new country. He never spoke about why he stayed behind or why his brother returned. George eventually married Jeannie Caprini, and the two married in 1922. Over the next 2 decades, they built a large, loving family, welcoming 10 children in total. Their youngest was born in 1942. Around the same time, their second oldest son, Joe, left home to fight World War II. By the mid-1940s, the Sodders were well known and respected in Fayetteville. They were financially comfortable, hardworking, and close-knit. But George had one habit that sometimes put him at odds with others. He was outspoken, especially about politics. He openly criticized Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, even after many Italian Americans in the area supported him. When Mussolini was deposed and executed in 1945, George's past comments reportedly left bitterness lingering in the community. That fall, unsettling things began to happen. In October 1945, a traveling insurance salesman visited the Sodder home. After George declined a policy, the man reportedly grew angry and issued a chilling warning. George's house would go up in smoke, and his children would be destroyed. Allegedly because of George's opinions about Mussolini. Not long after, another visitor examined the home's fuse box and casually remarked that it would cause a fire. George had found this odd since the wiring had recently been updated after a new electric stove was installed. Then there was the car. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, George's older sons noticed a strange vehicle parked along the main highway. The people inside appeared to be watching the younger Sodder children as they walked home from school. Still, Christmas Eve arrived as it always did. That night, the family gathered to celebrate. Marion, 19, returned home from her job at a local dime store, with toys for 3 of her younger sisters. Later in the evening, Martha, who was 12, Ginny, 8, and Betty, 5, begged to stay at past 10 p.m. They were allowed on the condition that Maurice, 14, and Louise, 9, finish their farm chores first. The oldest sons, John, 22, and George Jr., 16, went to bed early after a long day working with their father. Before turning in, Jenny reminded the children to finish their tasks and then went upstairs with the youngest child, Sylvia, who was age 3. At around 12:30 a.m., Jenny was jolted awake by the sound of a telephone ringing. She went downstairs to answer it, but the caller asked for someone she didn't recognize. In the background, Jenny heard laughter and the clinking of glasses. Uneasy but confused, she returned to bed. About half an hour later, she woke again, this time to a loud thump on the roof, followed by a rolling noise. When nothing else happened, she tried to sleep. Then, just after 1 a.m., she smelled smoke. Ginny rushed downstairs and discovered flames in George's home office, concentrated near the telephone line and fuse box. She woke George, who alerted their older sons. Together, George and Ginny escaped with 4 of their children, Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr. But the staircase to the upper floor was already engulfed in flames. The remaining 5 children were trapped inside. George and Ginny screamed their names into the fire, but there was no response. No movement, no sound. Every attempt to save them failed. The ladder, which they usually kept near the house, was gone. Buckets of water had frozen solid in the cold. The telephone line was dead. When George tried to use his work trucks to climb to the upper floor, both vehicles, which were working perfectly fine the day before, refused to start. Powerless, the family watched as their home burned to the ground over the next 45 minutes. The fire department didn't arrive until the next morning, citing staffing shortages and the lack of a driver. When investigators searched the remains, officials claimed the children had perished in the fire. Yet, no remains were ever clearly shown to the family. Some accounts say no bones were found at all. Others claim fragments were recovered but never properly documented. Despite their doubts, death certificates were issued on December 30th, 1945. Funerals were held on January 2nd. George and Ginny, overwhelmed by grief, couldn't bring themselves to attend. As time passed, troubling questions piled up. As the fire was electrical, why did the Christmas lights remain on as the house burned? Why was the missing ladder later found 75 feet away at the bottom of an embankment? Why did a phone repairman determine that the telephone line hadn't burned but had been cut high above the ground? And perhaps most disturbing of all, how could a fire intense enough to destroy a house leave no trace of 5 children? Later evidence suggested that the fire may have been deliberately set, possibly by a flaming object thrown onto the roof. Witnesses came forward with chilling accounts. One woman claimed she saw several children looking out from a passing car as the house burned. Another reported serving breakfast to children matching the Sodders' descriptions at a roadside stop the following morning, alongside a car with Florida license. George and Jenny spent the rest of their lives chasing answers. They offered rewards, followed countless leads, and refused to stop believing their children were still out there somewhere. They never found the truth. To this day, the disappearance of the Sodder children remains one of the most haunting and unsettling unsolved mysteries in American history. And the question still lingers in the darkness. What really happened that Christmas Eve?